Hey, welcome to the Social 333 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bentley. Today, my guest is Brieanna Lightfoot Smith. Brieanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Awesome. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you got going on.
Yes, I'm Brieanna, as Chris said, and I am a wellness and well-being strategist. I am in the leadership development space. I'm a wife. I'm a mom of 4. I have this beautiful planner that we're going to get to talk about more, and I'm really big on helping high-capacity, high-achieving leaders just build their lives in a way that's sustainable for them, because I have burned out on more than one occasion, and I feel like I blamed it on the environments that I was in. So I was in corporate, burned out, and I was like, it's the corporate job. And then I was a full-time entrepreneur, and I burned out, and I said, oh my gosh, it's the fact that I'm building a business. And then I came home and stayed home with my children full-time, and I burned out there too. So I figured, okay, it's not these entities, it's me, and that's why I love the work that I get to do now with my company.
Let's talk about some of the burnout stuff, because I've been burnt out in multiple things, just like you said, like the corporate job and also as an entrepreneur. That's probably why I'm feeling the way I feel today. But talk to me about somebody that is experiencing some burnout symptoms and like kind of what that is.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love the way that Tanya Dalton put it in her book, The Joy of Missing Out. She also talked about this on her podcast, but she said that burnout is not doing the wrong things. It's losing the motivation behind what it is that you're doing. And I find that to be extremely true, right? A lot of times we start something and we're super excited about it, and then it just becomes a new normal. And as we continue to go on, we're going down a path. We don't take a step back to assess, even if this was my goal a year ago, is it still my goal? And if it's not my goal, what do I want to pivot into? And then even if I don't know what I want to pivot into, am I willing to wait long enough for the answer to come to me? Or am I just going to keep plowing through because I feel like that's what is expected in society?
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners do the plowing. I know for a fact it's myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started in January of this year, and I was like, I'm just gonna, some events happened, and I was like, I'm gonna use that energy to propel me for the full like 6 months. I was gonna do this whole like 6 month monk thing, because
Yeah.
that's like going around on TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And I got to about the 3rd month or so, and I was like, like I just can't take not going out, or like I'm always sitting here, and like this is like I'm not a loser, right? Like like built all these companies,
Yeah.
and like I'm sitting here like on a Friday night or Saturday night because I made this pact to myself,
Right.
and I'm upset that certain things happened, and I'm going to use that and try to bottle it up. And then Tony Robbins talks about that a lot. Is like you're just kind of like forcing your way, kind of like a rocket, right? And if you ever notice a rocket, it kind of like goes up, and then it kind of does this curve for a long time, but it's going up, but it's just doing this curve. And for me, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs too, kind of suffer from the woman in the red dress, right? So like you get tempted, Alex Ramosi again, right? Like you get tempted to go do something else. You'd be like, oh, okay, well, real estate's really cool.
Yeah.
I'll go get my mortgage license. I'll start doing mortgages. I'll open up a branch, and I'll have all these branch people, and I'll totally forget about the real estate stuff for now. And then like you come to find out, like, you didn't pay enough attention. Now your real estate stuff sucks, and then your mortgage stuff is like,
Yeah.
And then you get tired of doing the mortgage stuff, and you're like, well, what do I do now? And then you kind of start doing that. And what I found is that it's kind of like going to the gym or going to do like a lot of stuff that you just really don't want to go do, and you have to go do it, and it sucks, and there's nobody there cheering you on. It's kind of like a marathon. Alex Ramosi talked about this too, where, when you do a marathon, I never run in a marathon, but when you run in a marathon or some sort of organized sport, usually like the beginning is the greatest part because people are cheering for you, and it's exciting, and gun goes off, and everything's going on, and then the middle is pretty boring. It's just you running, and then at the end, you're hoping to get, somebody's going to be there to see you at the end,
Right.
And I remember when I was drag racing, not on the street, but like like semi-pro, right? I would go race, and it would be like me and the last four people that were, it was like, it's lined up, right? And it was only me and the last four people, and there was like nobody in the stands. And it was like, it blew me away because it was like, I'm about to win this thing, and nobody's going to see it. So I don't know, like, have you experienced a lot of that with what, you went through with like the burnout stuff, where it gets really mundane, you get really tired of it? Or in my case, it was corporate, and I ended up getting pretty sick from it. But you excel, it's new, it's exciting, you're doing a great job. Your leadership or your boss or whoever it is sees that and then puts more work on your plate, and then more work on your plate. And then, like, man, God forbid you become management, and then you have like that plus, team stuff, plus, raising people up and going to all these meetings and trying to catch up. And that was the thing that always got me, was that I always had to catch up, and then I got sick because I'm like, I'm working all the time, and I'm always stressed out, and people yelling at me about stuff. And I don't know, that was my experience with burnout.
I appreciate everything you said, and I think about this Bible verse that says, what does it cost a man if he gains the world and loses his soul? And I find that it's not just like, okay, I've lost my soul in eternal damnation, and I don't know what the future holds for me. I see an opportunity for us to count the costs and say, like, what is a trade-off every single day? Because there are trade-offs, and everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so where I have found the most success and momentum with resisting those things that do pull you into that burnout space is really deciding what enough looks like for me, whether that is a specific amount of money, right? Where you say, okay, when I have this, like, at least for this season, it's good. And being able to put on those blinders, like you were talking about Instagram and TikTok, people will have you starting 50 different businesses by Friday, right? All you need to do is get an LLC, and just get an LLC, and then you get a DBA, and then after that you start this, and you invest. Even with investing, you think about that. Everyone's like, you just need to invest in these specific ETFs, and once you do that, you stay in for 6 months, and you pull out, and you become a day trader. And there are all of these shiny objects, all of this. I like to think of it as squirrel syndrome, but I love the lady in the red dress comparison as well, because it's true. It brings you in with all of this lore of, okay, this is the thing that's going to make you successful. Once you have this, then you're going to be happy, but that's never the case. And even tying back with the analogy you gave about the race, I find that a lot of us, whether we are in the corporate space, whether we are business owners, we have this finish line, and then we get to the finish line and we move the finish line instead of saying, you know what, I worked to get to this place for a year, 2 years, 5 years. I'm going to sit here and enjoy it for a bit. That comparison comes in, and we say, okay, it's time to get to the next destination. And you just can't live your life like that. You will never be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor if you're constantly moving the metric.
We were just talking about this with the last podcast guest, is that for me, like, my first year selling with the brokerage, I did really great. And then I went and invested it more into, a new office, or, more leads and stuff like that. And it was a down year. And then the next year was, I think, a down year. And then the year after that, it was like an up year. And I made like a ton of money, like a ton. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just buy more leads and more ads and more of this. And I never really enjoyed it because I was working even harder. And all that money that I would have made in the lean years, I made up in that year. And I could have just, just hung on to the money. And then in year, wherever I'm at in this lineage, right? But year 4 or 5, like, if I was a little bit short, I had that savings that I could have fallen back on. Instead, I was like, oh, let's double it, and let's scale higher, and this and that. And really, I could have just been like, okay, cool, this was a great year, like, win one for the Chris Bentley, right? And like, I'll go on vacation like I normally do, and just enjoy myself.
It's so true. And I found myself in that same hole because Be Light Media is not my first business. I had a coaching company where I work with moms who were building businesses from home. And it was exactly what you said. I had a very profitable year and everyone's like, okay, you made this income, now double it the next year. And I'm like, your guys are right. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to invest in all this stuff that was not actually what made me successful in the year before, right? I have found that the biggest riches that I've had have come from relationships, direct contact referrals, and people saying, hey, I know someone with this business, they offer this. I think it's in alignment with what you're offering. But I listened to all of the gurus and telling me this is what you need to be doing to scale. And I feel like I traded impact for visibility. And what I mean by that is I was making an impact in my work, but I'm like, okay, now that I'm making this impact, if I get in more places and I'm seen in more spaces, then that's definitely going to increase my revenue. And for any business owner listening to this, just because you're more places, that does not always equate to your bottom line. That doesn't always, having more followers does not equal more funds all the time, right? And I know people who they have success even in the brand space. And so people think, oh, if I get as many followers as this person, I'm guaranteed to have these brand deals. And it ties back to those relationships because you may, but that doesn't mean you're going to be in the same position to take advantage of opportunities that same individual did. So we really have to prioritize what is enough for us in that season. And then if you do get to a season where you legitimately need more, because I think about myself, what I need now as a mom of 4 is different than what I needed as a mom of 1, right? Mm-hmm. What I needed as a mom of 1 is different than when I was single and straight out of college and kind of just figuring it out. Like I had a lot more disposable income then. Right. So being able to be honest about the season you're in and then make assessments based on your own lifestyle and not on the lifestyle of other people is when I think you can build your life in a way that feels good and has some margin.
I think too is that what I really liked about what you said in the beginning was about the sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a story. We had a guest on here and I kind of feel his pain. Well, I definitely feel his pain, but he started a YouTube channel on relocating to the Dallas area, and he got no leads for the first year. And he was basically talking to a camera. Twice a week or sometimes 3 times a week, putting up these videos for a year, got nothing. And then he started getting some business, and year 5, he's killing it based off of what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. So he obviously sacrificed a lot. There's some lean years, and then now he's picking the fruits of his labor, which I think is great. I'm really happy for the guy. And I think a lot of people don't realize that A, it's going to take longer than what they expected. B, there's going to be a lot of sacrifice. And there's going to be some times where it's just not fun and it sucks.
Genuinely. Like, as much as we would love to dress it up, it's like there's going to be a lot of just not fun days. And like you said, I think even with entrepreneurship, people focus on the deal that you landed or the contract that you signed. But there's so much lead up that goes to that. I had a conversation this week with someone for what could be a really awesome opportunity, but I've been talking to this person since December, and we're just now in the process of getting things on the calendar for this to happen. So we do have to recognize that whether it is a traditional career or it's a business or even tying what you said about wellness, it's a long game. And if you're someone who's looking for those quick results all the time, I think you need to assess, 1, why you're so pressed to get it right now. And then 2, if you did get whatever the goal is right now, are you actually in a position to handle it, to carry it well, to steward well over it?
And that's the thing is a lot of people, what you're talking about with your burnout, is that people really don't understand that stuff. And then they get into it, and then they get into the sacrifice part of it, and then they get the burnout. And it could be the same thing with corporate. So it could be a situation where you're showing your skills, you're trying to get to that management position or maybe get to leadership, and you get into kind of where I was, where you're like, well, you have your normal day-to-day job that you had, and now all of a sudden you're getting more stuff on your plate. Your plate's bigger. Now you have to give up your friends. You have to give out going out. You have to give up all this stuff that you really, really enjoy because this is now what you want. So it's like, well, if you don't want that, that's cool. Like, you're going to have to go get another job and, like, not not try to
Yes.
flex your skills
Yeah.
so you don't have to get into management or say no
Right.
to management, or you're going to have to sacrifice for a while.
I think about the conversation that's been happening a lot with Emma Grede and what she's been saying about, okay, you need to go in the office and you need to be visible. And a lot of people got frustrated with that, and they said she's oversimplifying it, or she's coming from this place of privilege. And something that I shared was, she is talking about the sacrifices she made to get where she's is and even where she's going. And so if your goal isn't to have a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar net worth, then you can take what you need from her advice and leave the rest on the floor, right? And I think it's not fair for us to critique people's advice when they are saying, if you want to get where I am, this is what it's going to require of you. Right. And it ties back to asking yourself, is that really what you want? And if it is what you want, it goes back to what we said earlier, putting those blinders on and understanding, I might put my head down for 5 years. I may not see a view on this YouTube channel for 5 years. I may have a podcast and I think it's fantastic, and my main listeners are my mom and my cousin Fred. Like, you right. have to say, what is the vision that you're committed to? Because if it is about that visibility, or if it is about that overnight success, sometimes you have to just decide, like, maybe you need to be in a different industry or something that's going to give you that faster return on your investment.
Or you just have to change your mindset.
Or you have to change your mindset. Absolutely.
I've experienced it. I've had plenty of people as guests experience it, and I've just seen it in other people's stories. I mean, you have people living out of their car for a long time. Mm-hmm. Steve Harvey. You've had people
Tyler Perry too.
People that ate, awful food every single day for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. Alex Hormozy living in his car eating 7-Eleven food. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just like all kinds of stories. I saw a picture, and I'm going to switch it here in a second, but I saw a picture of myself. I went to a networking event. I used to do networking events every single night. And then I used to go out on the weekends, not to like drink and hang out, but to like for people to see me or talk to people. And I didn't know anybody, so I had to make some contacts, and we took a picture. It was 10 years ago. And I looked at that picture and I was like, look at all the stuff that I've done. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to compare anybody else in that picture, but look at the stuff I did, where I'm at now, and 10 years ago where I was, where I didn't have that many clients, and I wasn't in this magazine, or I didn't have a podcast, or I wasn't exposed, or I didn't have this or that or that or that. And I'm like, man, like, I'm just really grateful.
You put the reps in.
Yeah, like I sacrificed a lot, but I was also really grateful. I looked at it and I was like, like that was 10 years. Like that was 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
That I missed sports events. I missed parties. I missed girls. I missed this. I missed that. I missed that. Yeah. And like, look where I'm at. And it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a cool thing to look at. Talk to me a little bit about the REST framework that you have.
Yes. So the REST framework is something I had to embody before I could teach it to anyone. And it's 4 pillars: restore, energize, sustain, and track. And we already kind of started touching on the restore piece, because I think something that's important for people to know is that restoration looks different for everyone. For some people, sitting in silence feels restorative, and for others, they're like, please, I cannot be alone with my thoughts for that long without feeling like I'm going to panic. So they might want to listen to music. Or spending time alone, it's the extrovert, introvert, ambivert conversation, right? Some people, when they're in crowds, like you're talking about being out networking, that's energizing them. And other people feel like if they have to do that, it's some sort of punishment. And so I think that the restore piece is really helpful for anyone who is maybe coming out of a burnout season, or they feel like burnout is approaching them. It's kind of a good panic button of, nope, I can see that this is headed my way, or nope, I don't want to experience this again. Here are some restorative practices that I can utilize. So I know for me, I love to journal. It's one of the reasons why I have journaling prompts in my planner. I love to color. It's also a reason why I have coloring sheets in my planner. I love to go on walks. I used to think that I loved listening to music in my car. And I do love listening to music on a good road trip, but I think in this season of my life, what's been extremely restorative is just driving in silence, especially if I have a longer drive.
Me too.
Right? And I can imagine, especially being a podcast host and talking to people all day, by the time you get in the car, nobody talk to me, don't look at me, don't even think about anything that involves contact, right? So that's the restore piece. Then that feeds into the energy piece, because there are energy leaks and then there are energy sources. You have to pay attention to those quiet things that are draining you behind the scenes, that it's really easy for you to not pay attention and realize, oh man, I actually don't feel like talking after the hours of 5 to 10. I think about one of my friends, Tez, who has been a media professional since we graduated from college, and she does red carpets, and she has to do different reports, and she has to be at these different places, and she's doing recaps of events. And I remember going to brunch with her and another one of our friends, and one of our friends said, Tez, you're not talking. And she said, I talk for a living. So if it's okay with you, I just want to be here and not talk. And I'll listen to you guys talk, but I don't have anything to say, right?
Yeah.
So I think paying attention to that is really key. And then that leads to the sustainability piece. The sustain part of the framework is really all about what systems, structure, and support that you need in order to achieve whatever your level of success is, tying back to what we were talking about with enoughness. So in this season, sustainability practices for me look like getting our house cleaned at least once a month, because I have 4 children, right? And it can get really messy really quick. Other practices look like being able to utilize the YMCA's Parent Night Out service. They watch your kids for 4 hours every Saturday.
Wow.
And some days me and my husband will go and take the kids and we'll go do something. Other days we will drop them off and go back at home and go back to the house and talk to each other. And some days we'll drop them off, go back to the house, not talk to each other, because it's just it's a very loud house with 4 kids. Right. So that's one of my sustainability practices. I would also say being able to have moments like this where I am just Brieanna. I'm not the wife. I'm not the mom. And of course, I'm here and I'm talking about my business, but I love just meeting other people and making those connections. And then that ties into the last piece, which is the T, tracking. When you notice that you feel energized from something, or when something feels restorative, actually paying attention to it, so that when you start to feel those burnout moments coming, or you start to feel overwhelmed, you can tap back into those practices and prayerfully prevent that from happening or from happening again.
I see here that you built a digital tool, the Restwell desktop or dashboard.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
So the Restwell dashboard was something that I created as a practical everyday tool, because we just broke down what the Rest framework is, but I wanted people to have something that was customized to them. And I also understood that there are some people who say, oh, I know what my energy leaks are. I know the things that energize me. There are other people who say, I know what my sustainability practices look like. And there are some people who don't know any of those things. So what people do, they can go to restwell.space and they can take this free assessment. It shows them which one of those pillars needs the most attention. And then it gives them what I call, and I love this title, the peace prescription. So it says, here are some specific action steps that you can take based on which area needs some attention, some love, some TLC. I know for me, that's actually where this practice of driving in silence came from, because I assumed, oh, well, because I love listening to podcasts or because I love listening to music, this is a great time to listen to them, especially if I'm not with my kids, because when they're in the car, we love to listen to gospel music and worship music. I can't say I have a lot of Baby Shark and stuff that I'm having to rotate all the time, but I just assumed, oh, okay, this is my time. So that means that I can listen to a podcast. And I realized, no, actually, I just want to sit in silence. But it was me taking my own Restwell assessment that allowed me to see that. And then I was able to track and say, man, I really do feel more energized when I have those moments of silence instead of feeling every moment.
I like that. For me, I usually spend a lot of time in silence. I actually like driving in silence. And when I'm in silence is usually when I get my best ideas, or I'll
Absolutely.
remember something and I'll be like, oh, like I forgot to call that client. And then, but if I have a lot of noise around me, um, or somebody like living with me, I can't get that. Like, I'll be like, it'll be weird times. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm laying in bed. I'll be like, oh, I forgot to call that
Right.
client versus, 6 o'clock in the
Right.
afternoon.
And you can call them, or you can put it in your calendar to call them in the
Yeah.
morning. Absolutely. And I have those moments too with emails where I can go ahead and schedule it out while I'm thinking about it and then let it go. It ties back into those systems, right? So I have found, and even if people love music and stuff, I don't know anybody, and y'all can tell me if that's you, but I don't know anyone who gets their best ideas while there's all this other input happening,
Yeah.
right? Like when you take a moment, it's the same reason why people say, oh, I get my best ideas in the shower, or I get ideas when I'm washing the dishes, because there's a moment where you're creating space in your brain for it to be creative or to recall information that's important.
If somebody is experiencing some burnout, whether it be a employee or a C-suite leader, or just a small entrepreneur, small business owner, like what do you recommend? Maybe a couple steps, maybe some things that you've seen. Like, what do you recommend for someone? Whether it be going on to the website or maybe using a planner.
Yeah. I would say the first thing is to pause. And the reason is for exactly what we were talking about earlier. If you feel yourself depleted, if you feel that you're burned out or you're approaching burnout and you continue to plow through, in my experience, it's like you do more damage over time, right? If you say, man, I'm feeling a little tired, I'm going to take a break, then maybe you can relax over the weekend and by Monday you feel refreshed. But if you feel like that constantly week after week and you continue to ignore the signs and you never take a break, you never pause, now what could have been restored over a weekend becomes a 3-month sabbatical that you didn't plan, right? Or if you are a business owner, now you're not taking any new clients. In extreme cases, you're closing down your whole business because you have convinced yourself, oh, it's the business, when actuality, it's just how you're running it. So my first step is always to pause. Then it's to assess what are the things that are causing you to feel the way that you feel and what things have shifted. I know that when I had my business Brands by Bree, I noticed I used to love building websites for my clients, and then for whatever reason, there became a shift, and it felt like such a chore to do the website development. And when I paused and asked myself to assess, okay, why is this such a burden for me? What I realized is that I was not just building out the site itself, but I'm creating the copy for all of the pages, right? I'm going back and forth with the client about edits that they want to see, because they did not often come in with a specific idea. They may have had a color palette, and that was if they were feeling fancy. Most times they were just like, I know I need a website. What do I do? And so there were so many pieces, and I realized, oh, that's why I'm not enjoying this, because instead of being able to use the creative side of my brain of, oh, this looks really nice, I'm also having to think strategically about it. So pausing first, then you assess, okay, what feels misaligned from a previous season? And then I encourage people to take action. The reason why you have to take action is because it's one thing to have awareness about what needs to shift, but if you're not willing to make a change, then we get back into that same position of you are so far gone that the recovery period is probably going to be much longer than you want it to be. And it's just not necessary. So we have to slow down long enough to recognize, even if this is not something that I have planned, I need to make time for this. Because I think about a quote I heard that says, if you don't make time for your wellness, you're going to have to make time for your illness.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree on that. I've seen a lot of people, including myself, get sick from just either it being stress or, just working too much, or it'll be a situation where, like I was talking about before, where you have that edge or that chip on your shoulder and you try to plow through it, and you plow through it for the most part, and then you just kind of get tired.
Yeah, it catches up eventually.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, well now I haven't been going to the gym. I haven't been eating right. I haven't been sleeping right. And now all of a sudden, you're in a world of hurt.
Absolutely. I actually had that happen to me a couple of years ago. Was it a couple of years ago? Or maybe it was just last summer. It feels so far from now. But I was experiencing a lot of fatigue, and I guess it had to be last year because my daughter was born in 2024. I was experiencing a lot of fatigue, and a lot of people around me were just saying, girl, of course you're tired. You're a mom of four. You're a mom of four. Of course you're tired. And I just was like, no, this feels different than that. And I'm glad I listened to myself and my body, because when I went to the doctor, I found out that I was pre-diabetic. Now, I was pre-diabetic in my pregnancy, and I just assumed after I had my daughter that it went away, because that happens just like with gestational diabetes. You're diabetic when you're pregnant, and then you have the baby and you're not diabetic anymore. So I had assumed that it went away, but my doctor did blood work, and I also assumed maybe I'm just anemic again because I've struggled with anemia before. He did blood work, and he was like, no, their anemia is not that bad, but what I am seeing is, some of your levels look off, your A1C looks off. And he was asking me, like, what's your diet look like? And I had to admit, I said, I don't really eat a lot. And when I do eat, I eat French fries and baked potatoes and things that are going to fill me up because I know I'm not going to eat a lot. And he said, that is the equivalent of you just eating a bunch of Snickers bars. He said, your body's just breaking that sugar down. And that's why you're having so much fatigue, because your body's trying to process all of this sugar and it's not helping anybody. And I was so sad. I said, what? It's like you're saying curse words at me. Why would you tell me I couldn't have a baked potato? But I made the dietary change, and I'm telling you, in 2 weeks, I felt like a completely different person. Right. And that's the type of thing where people would either normalize it, like people were doing with me, or you think you have to get on medication when actually there's just a lifestyle adjustment that you could be making. So we really have to listen to ourselves, listen to our bodies. Don't normalize dysfunction. I tell people that all the time. Like, if you don't feel good, pay attention to that and then do something about it.
Brieanna, if somebody wanted to learn more about your program, maybe ask you some questions about your own personal burnout, where would they find you?
You can find me on my website, BrieannaLightfootSmith.com. I'm also super active over on LinkedIn, and it's just my name, Brieanna Lightfoot Smith. And if you want to take your assessment, you can do that for free, restwell.space. And I think you will absolutely love the platform because it's just very action-oriented.
Brieanna, I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you.